Hello for all the Moms Matter listeners. This is Dr. Susan Landers, and I am so excited today to tell you about my guest. Dr. Melanie Gray is an RN and a PhD who specializes in trauma informed care. And she has been an educator for nurses and other healthcare professionals for decades. She and I are going to talk a little bit today about trauma informed behavior that affects parents. Um, Melanie, can you tell me a little bit more about your past history of counseling nurses and other healthcare providers?
Oh, yes. So Susan and I have been a nurse for over 25 years. I have had experience with uh, caregivers, professionals, nurses in all the disciplines, physicians, nurses, OTPT, you name it, dietitians, and just everyone else who help support the healthcare environment. And one thing is for sure is that people experience traumas at every level of life. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot say, "Oh, physicians they've had such a good life. They have never had any traumas." Uh, you for nurses that is just the Center for Disease Control prior to the pandemic suggested that over 67% of all Americans had had at least one adverse childhood experience. Now, we're talking about adverse childhood experience, Susan, and then I haven't even layered on all the traumas that go on through life and adulthood.
Right,
Right?
right.
And
Well, as a physician myself, I can tell you, I grew up in a family where my father yelled, screamed regularly. He was a World War II veteran and a military man, and I was also hit as a child. And I'm a physician, and I carried those traumas with me through my whole life and did not learn how to deal with those until I became a mother and had children of my own. So I want to talk with you today, Melanie, about how trauma based behavior affects parents and where that comes from.
yes, it comes through behavioral modeling. First of all, who do you who that's the first start, I believe, because
Hmm.
who do children emulate? Who are they spending the most time with? It's their caregivers. So
Right.
behavior is modeled, right? And you tend to model the behavior that you think will get you, if you would, the most points with the person that you know cares for you. And that's a child. How do I get mom on her good side? How do I not get on the bad side, right? And so the part of it starts with just the modeling until you get out in life and you are exposed to other behaviors that are modeled before you, that make you say, hmm, and you have an aha moment that either you tend to embrace or at least will make you think about maybe how you should continue or maybe how you should not.
Exactly. So yelling was really common in my household growing up. And when I had children, my husband and I noticed that we parented very differently. I was very forceful, did some yelling, even when my kids were little. And that invariably happened during times when I was stressed or tired or overworked. My husband was very calm. And it took me forever, it wasn't really forever, it was just a couple of years to figure out that his family never yelled and my family always yelled. So we had been modeled different behavior for parenting.
Or just for communication. It's just not
Yeah.
even the parenting differences, it's the communication differences. Now,
Wow.
my mother, so I'm going to frame my parents both, well, I'm African American, obviously. Both of my parents are African American who were raised during the unfortunate, times of Jim Crow segregation.
Mm, mm,
So their perception for of parenting really was around survival because
Oh,
that's how it was for them. My father's father raised 9 kids on a farm in Alabama, 9 people on $300 a year. I found it on Ancestry.
wow.
So they said that my grandfather was mean, and I guess if I was trying to raise, keep 11 people together on
Hmm.
$300, I
Hmm.
don't know how nice I would have been either. But that really framed, I think, who my father was because he wanted so much better for me that he was very kind and very generous and a very doting parent. Where my mother, her mother was a domestic, and my mother was more brown skinned than me, and so she, there are color. If you in some circles of people being African American, in some parts of history, there is color judgment even among people of
Hmm.
color. So she had a lot of issues around color. Her color, she told me one day that she was glad that I passed the paper bag test. Now,
Oh,
and I say that about behavior because behaviors also that your parents give you help you feel some kind of way about yourself, and you begin and how your parents feel about themselves impacts how they parent you. That's another
right.
set of behaviors, right? In trauma. So my mother was very insecure. Uh, Always, nobody's better than you, and you should really plant that in me that I don't you let anybody think they're better than you. Well, that transcended because of her trauma, insecurity, and then the challenges of being an African American and always being dismissed just because you were brown. I mean, I don't think people really understand what it feels like to be dismissed in the room just because people look at you and they assume that you have no value. So those kind of how you carry yourself, how you protect yourself, your
Right.
communication is just another way of
Yes.
transferring trauma.
Yeah, I noticed that my mother was very passive when my father was yelling at me and my siblings, as if she might have been yelled at as a child because she withdrew as if she was fearful. And of course, I grew up to be fearful of my father and to think that something was wrong with me, that somehow I had caused him to yell, that it was
Mhm.
my deficiency somehow that made him yell. So that affected my self esteem. And parents come to parenting their children with all of this childhood baggage from how they were treated as children.
And they don't necessarily, we're having conversations now about trauma. It's not new. People have had challenges throughout the beginning of time, but we're now having these conversations, and our parents sometimes in their cultures or communities have not always been allowed to share their feelings or their challenges. What you may have heard it, Dr. Landers, what happens at home stays at home. What happens
Right.
in the family stays in the family. And that's
Right.
unfortunately how incestuous bad
Mm,
relationships often happen because there was no, or children not respecting children. Children are seen
mm,
and not heard. Those kinds of thought patterns, children are seen and not heard, uh, also are open doors for trauma because then we don't
hmm.
validate our children. We don't
Right.
give them confidence. We don't believe in their value, even when they're infants, if we're saying that they're only seen and not heard, and their voice
Exactly.
does not matter.
Exactly. So, how does a person, me as a young parent, who knows that they were brought up in a household of yelling or physical punishment, how does that parent go about breaking the cycle?
Well, the first thing they have to is understand, be self-aware enough to know when they are becoming dysregulated.
Mm,
When you know that your, heart is beating and you're starting to clench your teeth and you're getting ready to act, you have to then pause. You have to
Right.
be sensitive to when you're becoming dysregulated and have a process for how you reset yourself and start over.
So, can parents learn to identify their triggers before they get dysregulated?
Yes, I believe that they can be able to begin to identify their triggers. I think that something you have to can't necessarily do in the moment. You have
Hmm.
to have some reflective time. So I have a framework, Dr. Landers, that I call stop it. So people have behaviors they don't want. I say, okay, then let's just stop it. What do you have to do? You have to scan. You have to first set aside some time. We call it, journaling, and you scan however you want. I am
Right.
not a journaler on paper, but I can certainly talk to myself on this phone, right? And give myself a
Okay.
message.
Uh-huh.
This is how I'm feeling. And then I can have a moment to reflect on that. And so you have to scan. And then you have to be willing to tell yourself the truth. I'm looking kind of ugly right now. Do I realize that I am teaching my children in everything that I do? And do I really want to give my children's lessons in yelling and insecurity and fear? Then, once you're willing to tell yourself the truth, you have to always also ask, do I need help and how will I get it? Because Dr. Landers, that we want to heal ourselves, but physicians and nurses can't heal ourselves all the time. And
No,
be
not
very
when we're
transparent.
working at a stress job, right?
No, not when you're trying to work and you're sandwiched too between your parents and your children. You're not trying to heal yourself. You're not trying to do that. You cannot tell yourself that lie. You have to tell yourself the truth and be willing to get some help. And then you have to own your yeses and your nos. So own your statements. Own what you are saying and doing. And you have to own my behaviors are not correct. I want to change. And then you have to prioritize the change. That means you have to put some time and work into it and make it important. And then you have to get the right people, be intentional about change. Your eye is being intentional and being intentional about your change. That means you're going to set time to it. Make the time for therapy. Make the time to see a counselor. Make the time to be honest and transparent with your children. And you have to sometimes say, help me. When if you think I'm going to get ready to yell and you just say, hey, mom, we're going to stop it right now. Whatever your cue word is, you can have your children help you be better because by doing that, you're helping them learn too. And then you have to pee, you have to be, P is your last P. I'm sorry. Stop it.
P.
Your last T is be willing to transform. You have to be willing to change. You can't because say I want to be a better mom and then you do nothing. You have to be intentional and you have to be willing to transform and see your future. You have to see something better for yourself. So that is I think the framework, the stop it framework to help that mothers can use to be better parents.
I love that stop it acronym. Scan, truth, own, prioritize, intentional, and transform.
Yes, ma'am.
So the first step is learning about yourself and confronting the truth about what you're doing, owning your parenting style. I owned that I yelled too much, that my temper was too short, that I was
Yes.
easily triggered, and I prioritized changing that. I also sought out therapy from a counselor. I was intentional and I wanted to transform. But this is not easy.
No,
How
ma'am, it
do
is not.
how do parents and couples go about the transformation once they've realized that they're doing something that's based in trauma from when they were a child? How do they go about the transformation?
Well, again, I believe that they have to first own it, scan and say, we need the help and find the right help and understand that change is not easy and the recognition can often be painful, but I liken it to a surgery. I tell people, no one really wants to go have a knee replacement or a hip replacement because the journey is painful. Going through the post-operative process, the physical therapy is painful, but the outcome is worth it. And
Hmm.
so parents have to understand that in the point of healing, of getting help and going through the healing process, there will be some difficult times. But that is why you get professional help. Your friends can't necessarily, it's not the place to get friendship counseling or
Right.
to have all the whole chat at the bar. It's not a happy hour moment. You sometimes need professional help. And I know in
Right.
some communities and some families, having an openness to professional help is kind of a no-no. Is
Right.
not something they're comfortable with. But I
Right.
encourage them to do that because you're thinking about the legacy you're leaving your children.
Right. Right. Our children grow up with surrounded by our behavior. We model behavior for our kids. And if we are dysregulated and overly stressed and we yell, our children will learn that when they are dysregulated and stressed, that they will yell. Now, I want to talk about one more thing that's really important. We all mess up. Even
Always.
when I was in therapy learning how to not yell, I would make mistakes. But I learned how to go back and tell my kids, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. I was upset about the spilled milk. It was just spilled milk. It was not about you. You deserve better than that. I'm sorry that I yelled at you and scared you." I had to learn how to repair. I had to learn how to tell my kids when I had made a mistake, why I had made that mistake, and that it was not their fault.
Hmm. And that transparency uh is something some parents by philosophy don't may have been taught that you don't have to apologize to your children because they don't pay for anything.
Oh gosh.
I'm the ruler of my house. I pay for everything, and so therefore you need to be grateful and just accept how I show up. I there might be parents who've had different kinds of modeling and behaviors uh, transmitted to them. But they
Hmm.
have to be willing to maybe reframe how they value and see their children. I think that's
Right,
part of it too. It's seeing yourself and wanting to be a better parent, as well as being willing to reframe. How do you see and value your children? How do you
right.
see and value the relationship that you have now and that you want to have with your children in the future?
That repair, after we've yelled, after we've erred, when we did not intend to, that repair actually increases our connection to our children. It actually helps them learn to understand that adults make mistakes.
Hmm.
Adults can be accountable to their mistakes. They're not, the child was not the cause of it. And when the adult admitted to the child that it was their mistake, the child learned that people make mistakes and people can be forgiven.
Forgiven and that I have a value. As a
Ah,
child, the
yes.
child says, I have value.
Right,
And my parent was kind to me and they valued me to say, I'm sorry. I
right.
believe that parents, Dr. Landers, have to remember that your children, the moment a baby is born, they are all the man or woman they're ever going to be in that little infant package. And so their character you develop, but their strengths, their gifts, their talents, the whole package is in there. And
Uh-huh.
your parents are charged to develop that child to become their best. It isn't solely as if well, they're an infant now, and maybe they'll become somebody later. Their gift, they're a total package. They don't get no new arms, new legs, new toes. They are a total package that you have the blessing, the gift, the privilege of developing and making better. And so, how do I ask parents, how do you want to take care of that gift? See, if
Right.
you value that child as the gift that they are and will be, you'll think differently about how you speak to that gift because you treat things of value much differently than things
Right.
that you don't.
Well, that brings to mind the argument between nature and nurture. And children are born with their own individual nature. But that is not to say that parents have no role because they can nurture the development of
Yes,
that
ma'am.
child. And so it is a combination of nature, how the child is born, and nurture, how the parents care for and value the child, admitting mistakes, showing their love, making sure their child knows they're not responsible for their parents' behavior. That's the important thing in creating a nurturing environment, a
Yes.
safe, nurturing environment. I used to feel unsafe when my dad was on one of his rampages. I felt like I might be hurt. And the other thing that was so striking to me was that he never apologized. So I always walked around thinking, well, he thinks that didn't happen, or it was all my fault, or why didn't he apologize when he screamed at me? And I grew up having a false sense of my own cause of his behavior because he did not apologize. He did not accept any responsibility for belittling me by screaming at me.
Well, I think that, your life as a physician and having been a mom really speaks to your resilience and the value that having developed positive relationships, other positive relationships in your
Right,
life, can make such a difference. And I hope that your listeners are really learning from that, from you, learning that
right.
resilience from you, and that they are also resilient. And I think parents should know that if you are listening to this podcast and you are wanting to change, you are showing, and you're in the game of good parenting, you are displaying some resilience because you're showing up and you're trying to do better and you're willing to learn. And that's something to be celebrated. I believe parents have to celebrate their wins, even if they're small ones, in order to continue to win because it's in small
Yes.
increments.
Yes, it is. Progress, not perfection. None of us is born a perfect parent. And when we want to do better as a parent, if our behavior is trauma based, trauma influenced, and we can recognize that and own our truth and prioritize getting better, and we really want to transform, then that is so valuable and that makes us capable of progress. One step forward, maybe one step back, two steps forward and one step back. We will make progress if we want to really transform.
Well, yes, and you made a great statement that there is no textbook on how to parent each child. It is or any child. You kind of learn as you go, as you get to look at that child and watch them develop. You see their gifts, their talents, and what's their core nature and what do you need to nurture in them. You learn and discover them as they grow, and you'll learn and discover yourself as you grow as a parent, as you continue to go through the journey, reading good books, listening to podcasts, maybe getting a good parenting group that you can share and grow with. I mean, there might be a parent that you admire Go talk to
Right.
them and
Right.
ask them
Right.
what their secret is.
Right. That's a great idea. Now, there's some parents listening, like I was in my younger years, who may have already yelled at their kids and they want to stop. How do we let them know they haven't hurt their children by previous yelling episodes?
Well, I believe that we don't know that we can tell them that the children haven't felt something and haven't been imparted something, but you can re-nurture and you can re-encourage. The only way to know how a child is feeling is to ask them if they're able to tell you.
Right.
And
Right.
if they cannot tell you, you can just keep loving on them and encouraging them because children want to be loved and they will move on if you're willing to move on. I mean,
Right.
children
Right.
will just, okay, they'll reboot, right? So I think we have to reboot and we have to talk to our kids and we have to be observant, right? And be willing just to talk, to listen, to have that honest conversation and ask them, so how would you, did mom hurt your feelings? How did you feel when I yelled? And how would you like me to have said that? How can we,
That's a
how
great
can you,
idea.
how can we, I like your help. You know, you're a growing 6-year-old. I love how you're coloring and you're learning to do your hair so well. I want to speak better. So can you help mom speak better so that she helps you be better? And think about it, and then have that time. Or have settle rather than always trying to address things in the moment. If you think that you've made a mistake, then then you can just tell the child that, or have time in your day or in your week when you say, let's have a reboot, let's have a relook.
That's a
How
great
did the week
idea.
go?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
step back from our devices and let's um just have a time when we just relook at the week. How could
I,
mom, did you feel love this week?
oh,
Having
that's
special
sweet.
time with your
Yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
and
And
just,
and with your spouse. I used to ask my
oh yeah,
husband, "How do you think I did this week?"
absolutely.
I had a stressful week and I didn't yell at the kids. How do you think I did? And he would say, "Well, you were better than usual. You still had a temper, but you didn't yell at them. You were short-tempered." And so you can use the other adults in your life who you
Yes,
trust as a barometer for how your behavior is going.
yes, you
Not
really
just
can.
your kids. Yeah, you
Not just your
can.
kids, not just your kids. And so you get the help, build a community, and look at your family structure. How are you overpacking your day? We're in a society where everyone's
Hmm.
celebrating exhaustion, and we think if we're not doing more, we're doing nothing. And parenting takes time.
Hmm.
You might not be able to be on every board, get every uh, new role, be on every committee, be on every service organization if you're going to really invest in your kids. I mean, there really
Right.
are choices, hard choices that sometimes parents have to make because we all think we can have it all, right? As a woman, you can have it all, men have to have it all. But I think people have to decide, what does all mean to you?
Exactly. We have to be clear about our values. If you prioritize how your children are doing, you're not as likely to work 60 hours a week. You may want to work 40 instead of 60 and spend more time with your children.
Because
And
love is
no,
spelled time, isn't it? Love is
yes,
spelled
it is.
Time.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Dr. Gray, this has just been a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for talking with me about trauma-based parenting difficulties. And I'm here to tell the listeners, parents who yell can learn not to. Parents who yell can break the cycle. You can learn your triggers. You can learn how to regulate yourself. You can learn how to calm down before you yell at your children. And with professional help, you can be a better, calmer, more resilient parent and raise calmer, more resilient children. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate this conversation.
Oh, Dr. Landers, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope we meet again.
Oh, we will. We will. Thank you.
Thank you.